and all. I hope you all are well and safe in these crazy times that we're living through right now. And I was thinking that it would be not such a bad moment to put a little something online for free to work on Swivels, if you're interested. So this is sort of going to be geared towards beginner and intermediate, but I'll throw some stuff in there for more advanced practicers as well. Because swivels are one of my very favorite things to teach and one of my really all-time favorite things to do because they're just so joyous. So since we could all use a little bit of joy, I thought I would like to share that with you. I'm standing here in front of my little hobbit door, and I have a little apparatus attached, but you can feel free to use a scarf if you want, maybe a densely knitted scarf that you can tie on the other side if you're worried that it won't give you enough support. And I thought that it would be helpful to break it down in a way that I would want to do it if I were starting at the beginning again, because I had a heck of a time learning swivels when I was getting started. And I would stare at all my friends that were able to do it and go, oh my gosh, that's so cool, how do you do it? And it was such a hard thing to explain. So I thought we could do it in a three-step process. The first one being just realizing that it's a triple step, right? It's a triple step like any other. So you have triple step or left, right, left, and that's all it is. So anything beyond that you're adding is, that's flair, that's great, but that's your base. So I tend to do most of my swivels with 7 and 8, keeping both knees toward the right on 7 and then trying to do kind of a surprise attack on 8 so that it looks like it really draws the eye on the 8. But there's a lot of different factors that go into swivels, obviously. If you're doing straight swing outs, then your swivel's going to be completely different, or rather the energy that you're able to bring into it is going to be super different. Versus a whip, for example, which brings you in a completely different place and gives you different tools to work with. So one of the things that I really appreciate about my own dance history and feel really blessed about is that I come from LA, so I started dancing, watching people do all these Hollywood-style swivels and smooth-style swivels that were so beautiful aesthetically. And then when I moved to Europe, I noticed that the connection was completely different and that the swivels were more sort of Swedish-inspired. Now, I'm not an expert on Swedish-inspired swivels, so I'm just going to kind of glaze over what I do know about it, and any fellows in Europe who feel the urge to correct me, please feel free. I humbly accept your help. You have to excuse me, I'm recovering from a cough. So, first things first, we have the rhythm. So that was step 1. Step 2 is about incorporating the energy from your swing out or from your whip. So if you're working with a sort of neutral swing out, as I like to think of it, I see 3 types of swing outs or whips that kind of encompass about 90% of what I see on the dance floor. I see straight swing outs, a sort of neutral swing out where the follow and the lead kind of exchange places, and then a third, which is the whip, which is an LA specialty. So if we start with the first one, I'm just my handy dandy little guy over here, then you're coming forward on your 5 onto that left foot. So what I tend to do is I tend to redirect things and go 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's just step, step, triple step. So on 5, we're coming forward, and I tend to plant into the ground with the ball of my foot, come around, land on 6 right here, and then 7, 8. So the neutral kind of swing out, we kind of get sent out to the side. So in that case, it would be 5, 6, 7, 8. Then for the whip, we come out completely inverted. So in that case, it would be 5, 6, where I can really choose if I want to follow that sort of LA style and sit into my arm as much as I want. And then 7 and 8. The key is to not stop and to take the energy that you get from your 5 and 6 and weave that into your swivel. Because one of the hardest things about practicing a swivel, is trying to do it in place. If you're trying to do 7 and 8, it doesn't really make sense to do it unless you add some energy from your arms, right? Because starting static is just too difficult. It doesn't seem logical. So I suggest that you take your scarf or your little apparatus here and try those. If you have a partner that you like to work with, and you prefer a specific type of swing out in general, or they tend to give you one specific type in general, then just go with that one. You know, if it's straight swing outs, then just work on your 5, rotate 6, 7, and 8. Into the neutral one, cool. 5, 6, 7, 8. And just try to keep the movement from one step feeding into the movement of the next. Another thing that you can do to practice weaving that movement together is stepping 6, 7, 8, and doing a triple step there, which means in practice that you're pushing off of your left foot, crunching, whether you're sinking down or not, you're doing a crunch, and redirecting somewhere else. But we want to make sure that your feet are both pivoting, and pivoting consistently, right? That's why it looks kind of funny sometimes when we try, and it just goes 7 and 8 like this. Or if we try to compensate with the hip, it's because the energy isn't already feeding into that part of your swivel from the move before, or the step before, I should say. So once you feel a little bit comfortable with your general aspect of 7 and 8, then you can start playing with style a little bit, and this is where so much of the fun happens. I think the thing that you want to focus on with your swivels is, 1, finding a style that's aesthetically pleasing to you, and 2, using the energy from your dance partnership and finding a way to continue that flow without breaking it, because that flow, that consistent flow, is what makes swing outs and whips such a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, that said, let's get into some style. So, as I mentioned, where I come from, we tend to really sit into our 6 and get down, keeping this right arm and elbow close to our body, doing a crunch, and using this place where my right foot is as the pivot point for 6, 7, and 8. And I'm trying to keep my shoulders square to my partner this whole time. From there, if you have knee issues, for example, you can do this one, which is just 7 and 8. And you can extend here a little bit if you want to, but actually my knees don't have to do much work at all. So if you've had surgeries or injuries or things like that, this is probably the one that you want to use, because it doesn't require you to do any of this. It's just an illusion that makes it feel like it. So one more time for that one, we would have 6, 7, and 8. And you can just extend here and make it look like you did something different. And that's sort of my go-to swivel, I believe. I like to sit away a lot and try to bring my knees far around, a little bit further than you would if you've been injured, and just keep them going while still trying, however successfully or not, to keep my shoulders square to the partner. Then you have a style where you keep your feet a little bit further apart. And this is what I see a lot of the European dancers do a little bit more. It's kind of a stepping here as opposed to stepping together. So they step a little more open and maybe use the hips or the butt a little bit more, separating the shoulders versus the hip action. Whereas in LA, sometimes I see people using a lot of the shoulders, which is cool too. What else for style? Yeah, another difference with the European dancers is they tend to give a little bit more of an extension with this right arm. So if you're coming from a straight swing out, for example, and you have your 5, 6, they might stretch more here. 7, 8. That's terrible. Let me do one more. That's not a style that I've mastered, let's say. So if you do 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2. Don't forget your 1, 2 also. That's another tip, is that if you're going to do a swivel, go for it. Swivel your 1 and 2 and swivel your 7 and 8. I think that's probably enough for style for now. If you're interested in more stylistic tips, please feel free to let me know, and I will think about doing another one of these little things. But in the meantime, those 3 steps are key. Understanding the rhythm and understanding that wherever you go or whatever style you're just doing a triple step. Number 2, continuing the momentum from your previous steps, from your 5 and 6. And making sure that you're just redirecting the energy and not killing it by taking a flop step that releases everything. You want to keep that energy in your center and redirect it. And that's the key to a really cool swivel. Also, with the style, make sure to just be you and film yourself after having tried a couple of different styles, and pick something that you think looks great to you. I always really loved the style in LA of kind of showing the heels, because it's just something that looks so beautiful to me that I was hooked the second I saw it. But you can pick anything that you want and feel free to be creative, and I wish you every ounce of luck in your Swivels journey.